Hi, book lovers. Welcome to Goddess Garden Book Chat. I'm so glad that you're here. If this is your first visit, welcome. I'm glad you chose us to spend a little time with. If you're a returning member or a subscriber, you mean the world to me. And I'm so glad that you chose to spend time with us today. Welcome back. Now, the book club is here for adults who love a good novel, regardless of the genre, the weirdness, the planet it takes us to, or the openness we find on the pages. And I always want to start our meetings letting you know to be comfortable, be welcome. Topics discussed in this club include everything from basement dungeons to other worlds. I will read them all, and I want to share in this safe space along with all the other spaces. So I'm glad you're in a part of the conversation, and I hope you'll join me on the social pages. I like to have the discussions on Discord. I think it's a great place for us to really do deep dives on some of the books that we're going to come across. So hopefully you'll join me. Whether you're here in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whether you're in your car, doing your gardening, I'm glad you're a part of the conversation because today it is a celebration of books, friendship, and joy. This is a special episode, and it means the world to me that it's happening. So I want to thank you for joining. Goddess Garden Podcast is going to be talking to my lifelong friend and fellow book lover, and we're going to share a heartwarming and fun filled conversation. This is going to be a lot of fun, friends. We'll be taking a trip down the library aisle, so to speak, chatting about our favorite reads, book journeys through the years, the joy of growing through literature, all the things that really true develop into what we call book love. If you're a bookworm or just love the magic of friendship, you won't be disappointed. So today, this is also going to include one of my big deals because I love audiobooks, narrators. And just to name a few to shout them out, Simon Vance, who read Merrick by Anne Rice, Cheryl Ray, who read Twist Me by Anna Zares, Christopher Lane, who read An Accidental Affair by Eric Jerome Dickey, Elizabeth Hart, who read Razor's Ride by Jamie Begley, Campbell Scott, who read The Shining by Stephen King, and
Oh,
Joel
wow.
Frumpkin, who read J.J. McAvoy's series, A Bloody Kingdom. I cannot tell you how much I love that journey. We're going to be talking about series. We're going to talk about character journeys. We're going to talk about authors. We're going to talk about accepted truths. And what I mean by that are these are truths that no one questions. It's just a deep dive into these particular topics and narratives that others want to share. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about biographies. So it is my joy, my honor, and my pleasure to introduce you to my dear friend, 8901. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a long time in the making. Um, we go back many, many
Yes, we
years.
do. Yes, we
And
do.
we'll leave those minis right there. Let's suffice it to say we are women of a certain age.
Oh, yes.
Our
And
journey
we're
has
doing it well,
encompassed.
might I add.
I would agree with that. Our journey has encompassed laughter, joy, sorrow, tears, but we have always stayed together. Um, Thank you for allowing me to share in your podcast and to share my love of reading, something that I've been doing for years and years and years. And I have my dear mother to thank for really introducing me to the joy of reading. One of the books that she put in my hand was a paperback, if you can believe that, all these years ago.
Tell
And
me
I
about
still
it.
have it. The name of the book was Five Smooth Stones by Anne Brannon. And it is the story of Sarah and David and their journey through the 1950s. And David is a man of color, and Sarah is white. And everything that they go through, and his grandfather is the voice of reason, if you will. And it was just I still remember the story to this day.
That's amazing. And that's the effect of a story that really does move you.
Yes,
Pieces of it will stick with you. I know where our book journey began because we go so far back.
yes.
I want to know if you know where our book journey began.
Oh, yes, I do. Mrs. Brown's English class.
Now, I have been reading my whole life, but this was an assignment, and I just want to give some parameters to our club. We were asked to pick a popular classical work and a visual aid and bring it to class, having read that book and share what we read.
Uh-huh.
Stephanie brought a rose and the scarlet letter. I, for the life of me, do not remember what book I chose.
Cass, how could you not remember?
I don't remember the book. I remember that you brought a rose, and I thought that was so typical you. And then the standout was a young
Oh,
man in our class who had chosen the book Sounder.
and I'll pick it up from here. He had chosen the book Sounder, and his visual aid was a dog leash that was a chain. So he walks up to the beginning, to the front of the room, and he takes his visual aid and he plops it on the table, and it makes all this noise. And he looks up at us and he leans in and he says, "The name of my book is Sounder. It's about a dog."
Where did you get that dog? He
He
said.
said, "I found
To this
him."
day,
I have
to this
never
day,
forgotten that. I have
we have
never.
never forgotten the way he looked at us, that dog collar. I think that's why I kicked out whatever book I had. Literally the way he leaned in, and I just leaned back like, what on
And
earth?
I think the whole class, literally, because he was like so intense, and we all just kind of did this in our desk, and we
Right.
were trying not to laugh when he said, "Where did you find him?" He said,
I'm
"I
like,
found
is
him
he doing quotes?
down the road." And
We're
Miss
not supposed to
Brown,
do quotes.
and we're like, "What is he doing?" And Miss Brown jumps up, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute." And she had given us the parameters that day. We were not to laugh at anyone
No,
because
never.
it's very difficult to
I can
get
laugh
up.
now because it's 40 years later, but I
And
did
we can
not.
laugh now, but then we did not. And we were just shell shocked because we'd never seen anything like that. But obviously, it had an impact because we're still talking about it now.
One of the things I also want to delve into, um, were you a person that took book journeys through the library? Was the library or
Oh,
did you always
yes.
buy books?
The library was something that was introduced to myself and my brother as children. I mean, that was the joy. You had a library card and you went to the library and you participated. Even then, they had readings for children. And another thing that I will never forget, I was in the fifth grade and we had a small class. And every day after lunch, my teacher would read to us, and he would choose a story and we would read it for about 30 minutes until we got to the end of it. And I can remember seeing Mr. Norton sitting up at the front of the class, and we were all just like this, waiting for the parts of the story. And when he ended it on a Friday, he would usually give us more time, but
Right.
we could not wait for that journey. And so,
Do you
stories.
think that that created do you think it
I think that his introduction to reading for children of that age was quite significant,
okay.
because not only did we read story after story after story, and like you, I can't remember. I do remember one story, which was Moby Dick. That's how I got introduced to Moby Dick because that was a story that he read to us. And
You were doing some heavy lifting when you were young. Let me
some
tell
very heavy
you
lifting.
that My book journey, especially when the library was introduced to me, it was because I was always going to the South in the summer. Sometimes we would travel, sometimes we would be stationary. And those were the times where my library card got a workout. And I also had the benefit of my grandmother being so invested in a part of the library that when story time came, she led it. And instead of picking up a book and reading it, she had memorized books and she would act them out because heaven forbid you did
Oh,
not tell
how
her she wasn't a great actor.
joyous.
So she would tell you the wind, shh, the grass, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And that's how, to me, audiobooks resonate because it brings me back to that moment where you're encompassed in a story and all the elements come with you. I love a
That's what makes
dramatization story
a
because
true
those bring all
story.
the background and the sounds. I don't know if you've ever, because I know audiobooks aren't your thing, but The Sandman as an audiobook is probably the most excellent journey I have ever been on.
Well, you'll be interested to know that I have since gotten into audio because I travel so for work. So that is my road dog. And the
Yay!
very first audiobook that I did was I Know Where the Crawdad Sings.
Really?
And I couldn't wait for the morning and the evening because I my commute is about almost an hour. So I was very ensconced in that. And I've been reading for many, many years. And you know what some of our favorites were: Sidney Sheldon, um,
Harold
Anne
Robbins,
Rice, Harold Robbins. Oh my
Jackie
goodness.
Collins.
Jackie Collins. How can we ever forget any of them? And those were the books. And I think you made mention at one time how we never really discussed the books. We would say things like, "Did you read it?"
Exactly. That was
And we
it.
just yes or no or don't say anything. I'm in the middle of it now, or something along those lines. But we knew we were reading some of the same books, and I can remember just the whole joy of starting a new book, regardless of what it was. And even back then, my cousin gave me. She was a big Dean Koontz fan, and I remember the first Dean Koontz book I ever read was The Watcher. And
77 Shadow Street.
and so again, I've never been one to just have such a narrow view of reading. I know when my book club started in 1996 and we are still together and going strong, our mindset was to read Black authors. And oh my goodness, we have a plethora of Black authors,
Fascinating.
past
What was the
and
most
present.
notable?
Oh, let's see. We did all of Elin Harris. At that time, Eric Jerome Dickey was just coming out on the scene, and there was a bookstore, a black bookstore in the city that I was living in at the time, and she was actually hosting him. And so our book club sponsored, if you would, him with refreshments and the like, and he
We
came.
have that in common.
Mhm.
I met him too.
And he would always call me his homegirl because he too was from Los Angeles, went to Fairfax High School. So, I mean,
It's
you just never know. But, I think as we have matured, our tastes and our interests have matured as well. I mean, there was a time when nonfiction books, I was like, oh, just gag me. I wanted to be taken away. But since then, I have come to appreciate true nonfiction, historical fiction, you name it. And I think what really started my inroad into that was a book called Cane River by Lolita Tatamy, who actually talks about my father's side of the family.
I know that well. It was
I
an
know
actual Oprah
you
book read.
exactly. And to see names of people that I was related to and photos and here is some of my beginning on paper. And I think it gave me a new appreciation. And even though the warmth of other sons, which took me to my next level of that, because my father's family was part of that Great Migration. They
Wow.
left Louisiana in 1942, headed to California. And the stories I've heard, of course, my grandfather went ahead of everyone to secure housing, to secure a job. And my dad told me many times how they boarded the train at midnight. And for 3 days, they were on that train and all the food. And they, of course, they were in the back of the train at the time. And so the other Black families that were on that train, the children played in the aisles, they shared food until they got to their destination. And when I read that and I thought about, because I think she mentions it's like 6 million people during that particular time migrated from the South.
You know, I bought that book easily 2 years ago. I have yet to crack it open.
Oh, you would love it. I
I am
mean, it is.
stacking books higher and higher.
I know. And now, when Kindles and the like first came out, I was very anti. I wanted a book in my
Right.
hand. But I realized as time went on how that mindset was very limiting because I could take that Kindle any and everywhere. And once I put a cover, and I think what it was, when I first got my Kindle, I didn't have a cover. So I'm holding this tablet in my hand, and I didn't like that. I wanted the feeling of a book. So I bought a cover, and I think that is what took me over to, as some folks would say, the dark side.
Let
I'm
me tell
deeply
you
into
that
books.
for me as I had an album that played at 33 RPM. On one side of the album was the story of Alice in Wonderland. On the other side of the album was The Little Prince.
Oh my gosh, two
I would
classics.
sit in the living room of our home and play that Alice in Wonderland, that scene where she eats the mushroom and she drinks the liquid and she shrinks as an audio experience. I can still hear the. And when it comes to audiobooks for me, I have, because of my elders being exposed to watching someone in my family on a Saturday read a Sears catalog, a Spiegel catalog, turn on football, turn on baseball, and then turn on the radio and have the newspaper at the ready. I listen to books while I do other things.
Of
It is
course.
very natural to me to be multitasking with a book going on. And if I hear something where I need to stop and pay attention, that's what I do. Now, fast forward to I just read Stephen King's book, The Shining. Had seen the movie at least 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Was not prepared for this book. And it is because of the way that the author, well, I shouldn't say the author, the narrator read this book. I felt the madness of Jack every
Honey,
chapter.
I'm home.
And what's interesting is it seems like a thick read when you look at it as a book.
Mm-hmm.
As an audio book, when he finds the scrapbook, when he starts to realize that the hotel is inviting him, when he starts to think, gee, my wife and kid are holding me back. The way it is narrated, because he has a very monotone, very low key style,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just eases you into this insanity, and it is the greatest. Oh, I had such a good time with that book. It also made me realize that there's not a lot mirroring the two. It's literally
Oh
almost
no.
two different journeys about the same story. Fascinating once you read the book. And so,
Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
one of the books that one of my favorite authors is Pat Conroy, Prince of Tides and the South Abroad.
You have
And
always spoken highly of the Prince of Tides, even when it
uh,
was a movie.
but see, then by then when the movie came out, I had already read the book. And that is one of the movies that is so closely related to the actual story
Wow.
that I can almost recite the ending page when he's going over the river there and on the bridge. And I'm like, oh my gosh. The other one that they did not make into a movie that is one of my favorites by him is The South Abroad. I would highly, highly recommend. I don't know if it's an audiobook, but I mean, I think books come to us at different times as we have different needs.
I agree.
Um,
On a journey of books with, I belong to what's called a Women's World Book Club. And
mhm.
like your book club, we were only reading women authors. And the beauty of it is they picked books that I never would have picked. Um,
Mhm.
I've even had the pleasure of reading books that I personally couldn't wait for the meeting to start so that I could tell them how much I rampaged against the author. It was important to me, regardless of whether um, you actually rock with the author per se. You're in line with the topic. The topic can be great. You don't have to agree. It's okay. Even as I told another member who said, I couldn't finish it. I just struggled with it. I said, well, that's a review. Because she was going to bow out of the meeting because she hadn't read the book. And I
Oh
said, don't
no.
you dare. Tell us why you didn't finish it. Tell
Mhm.
us where you stopped. Because I can tell you that I was there with you, no doubt, rampaging, but I pushed forward just because I wanted to have more ammunition for our meeting. So that's what I mean by, book journeys are so exciting.
They
Sometimes,
are.
and
They
being a part of the
truly are.
club, being a part of this book club, having you here talk to me, energizes me in a way that just makes all those books that are waiting for me something that just knocks at the door.
Yeah, it's
I'm
calling
going
your
to
name.
switch reels and I'm going to talk a little bit about genres. Tell me what genres in order of importance you read from.
Ooh. Hmm.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and I don't know that
You don't have a favorite genre? I'm shocked.
I really don't. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, well, I like that. I like that. I mean, I could go through the gamut, and I give you an example. Same thing, like you said, your book club started out with uh, authors, women authors. Well, when my book club first started, we wanted to delve into authors of color, and we had many to choose from: Beverly Jenkins, Rashonda Tate Billingsley, McBride. Again, Elin Harris, Eric Jerome. But I said, you guys are really narrowing your reading. We've got to
Absolutely.
expand because it's about the character, the story, the journey. It doesn't matter the color of the person that wrote it. I
Because think about this.
didn't.
When you limit yourself like that, you will miss looks like the three body problem.
The dragon with the girl with the dragon tattoo.
You
That
will
is a
miss
series.
such great works and journeys like
Hmm.
Michael Harriot's Black AF History. You
Yes.
will miss out on a perspective shared. Now, for me, when I look at genres, the head of the pack, hands down, according to my Kindle, is romance. Because romance breaks down into romance thriller, romance suspense, romance
Yes.
fantasy and sci-fi,
Yes.
romance
Yes.
that is nonfiction. I have had such great journeys in books that were fiction because what I learned about myself is my romance can be erotic, or it could be
Oh
just a
yeah.
simple, real tight. We are friends and lovers, but we don't talk about it. If there is no mayhem involved, if there is not at least one dead body, if you are not on some sort of journey running from something, if there's not an evildoer overlord that ties the series together, the cause, I can't rock with it. Oh, I like you. And no shade to Anna Huang. For that reason, I cannot deal with her books because it's just, I like him, he likes me. Sometimes we're on the same page, sometimes we're not, sometimes we're together, so blah, 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 blah. Then he gets shot. Is somebody trying to kill him? Did you get kidnapped and locked in a dungeon? Did you have to literally wear a dog collar to eat your dinner? Did you have to call him sir? I need this kind of buildup in my brain.
And there's nothing wrong with
No,
that. It's,
but
and
the
I think,
second behind that, I honestly and truly tell you that nonfiction has become the hard second competitor here. Everybody from Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's got me reading books by cosmologists,
oh,
by
he is
physicists,
phenomenal.
by
He
an
is
astrophysicist.
absolutely phenomenal.
And the people that he talks to on his podcast show who have written books, I've gone and looked at these books, read a couple, and enjoyed them. Now,
Hmm.
you went to school with me, so you know that science is not necessarily where I should find joy, let alone nonfiction science. A cosmologist and a scientist and astrophysicist talking to me, you wouldn't have picked it.
No.
I One of my favorite books in my collection right now is called The History of Mathematics, and it's read by Tony Shalhoub. It was,
Oh,
it was designed as a relaxation tool and sleep aid. And trust me, it's only 30 minutes long. I've never finished this book. I've read it 12 times. I put it on, I lay down, and he starts talking about the Phoenicians and the algebraic calculations and the Romans and the way they dealt with mathematics and the abacus. And I am done.
and you are done. And again, you can't limit yourself. I mean,
Absolutely.
again, it's like I remember one of my favorites, and it's an oldie but a goodie, the Joy Luck Club. And I'm going to take a moment to kind of go down that because here we were with mothers and daughters, and we all know what that relationship is like. And they are trying to impart the heritage on the younger generation.
Absolutely.
And that is one of my, mm, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say pet peeves because when you go back to a book like The Warmth of Other Suns and other books that are proud and talk about our journey as a people, and then you come into 2024 and it's like, what in the hell has happened to us?
Right. You do
Um,
question, you read that our journeys are almost parallel when you look back 40 and 50 years ago and where we're at today. I think that's
and
the most
it's
frustrating part about reading literature about my culture.
and I would very much agree with you and how, and I can still see even when my father and relatives were playing dominoes back in the day, they had on ties, short sleeve shirts, slacks. Women went to the store
With a
dressed
bonnet,
with hats.
with a bonnet and stretch pants.
You know. And we had standards. You couldn't go out of your mother's house or my mother's house. Rollers, slippers, that was not allowed. And
and in
so
these books, you find that pride. You look at a lot of literature that captures our history and our journey, like The Warmth of Other Suns. Even during the Great Migration, you didn't show up looking as if you had no option and no time to prepare for
you
what
just
was
rolled out of bed. And when I see them in the store, I'm like, did you even bathe this morning? Did you do your pajamas? Did you just, because
it's
again,
hard. It's hard. But I will say this. When you look comparatively, I think these people that don't really tap into what should be resonating with you as a daily way of getting up and presenting yourself to the world comes from the lack of information you have about what you should take with you. And
that's right.
that's why books are so important. Because if it doesn't come from an elder, if you didn't have the luxury of parents who shared the family journey
Right.
or journeys that they were aware of. If you grow up in a situation where you don't agree with their journey, you don't want to go down that journey when you get older. One of the beauty, one of the beauties I found anyway in reading is that it has the ability to transport you into information with receipts so that you can garner information you can use. And
Yes.
to me, it doesn't matter necessarily that it's about my culture because, first and foremost, I'm an American.
That's right.
Period. End of sentence. So, all things that affect me as a citizen matter to me.
Of course.
Then, when you break it down even further, what matters to me as a woman, then what matters to me as a Black woman, then what matters to me as a member of a family, so on and so forth. And so, getting to this place in my life, how I present myself proudly, the way that I speak, the way that I resonate is as if my mother could turn on YouTube, and Lord knows she has, and look right at and go, is that my daughter? What is she
And
talking about?
the other piece to that is you want her to be proud of what comes out of your mouth.
First and foremost, it's a given in my way. Let me back you up. She set in motion an understanding that that's a gift.
Oh,
For
yeah.
others, it may be a struggle. I know of your parents, you know of mine. This was a non negotiable way of being.
Exactly. And,
So,
I think for me also reading because my mother's parents could not read or write.
and
My father's parents, I think my grandfather made it to the third grade and my grandmother made it to the sixth grade. And to see their journey, their migration from the South to LA, um, and to make a life and to have children and to instill upon them hard work and what it gets you. And like you say, it was a given. You're going to go to school. You're going to learn to do these things. You're going to appreciate these things. I mean, just like voting.
exactly.
My grandmother gave all of us our voter registration card with that $5 in your birthday card when you turned 18. And
The
again,
$2 bills. When they put
when the
Susan
$2
B.
bills
Anthony,
came out,
when
it
they
was the
put Susan
rage.
B. Anthony on the $2 bill, my grandmother thought that she had found the Holy Grail. And that
Exactly.
just shows you for people who are born of a certain area, those little bits, those little milestones, that little inch forward meant the world.
It meant the
To
world.
see somebody on a stamp of color
I
meant that
remember
that was the
when,
only stamp they would buy.
forever, when Barack ran for the presidency, my father called me and he said, I don't know exactly what to do here, but I want to donate to his campaign. And he said the only other presidential campaign I'd ever donated to was Kennedy. And
And
he,
look at the distance between those two presidents.
exactly,
That's the
exactly.
60s to 2000. We are
Yeah.
so fortunate.
And think about this where the other Kennedy was killed, the Ambassador Hotel, the Coconut Grove. How many concerts have our parents been to at the Coconut Grove?
You know, I was there when they closed that hotel. I
Oh,
walked through it. I had the pleasure because you had already moved out of the state. I had the
mm-hmm.
pleasure of working across the street when the announcement came through the paper that they were going to take it down. And now, because I don't want to drag you too long. I don't want to keep you here too long. So I'm going to give us 5 more minutes on this journey. But one of the things that I have always found, especially when it came to the landmarks of our hometown disappearing, is that
Yeah.
you don't really lose anything when you deal in literature.
No, you don't.
Even if you
Because the
look at old
story is,
Hollywood, you can go to the Brown Derby. If you
oh,
look at um, old historical literature, you can see
mm-hmm.
the lean to.
Yeah.
If you look at the ways the story is told from this particular um, ethnicity to this particular ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that are alike. There are things that are different. There are things that are included. There are things that are
And
left.
they're not. Yeah.
And
And you know,
so
I
it's
think to that end, that is what reading really solidifies. It expands you, it causes you to think. Whether it's a fictional story and you say to yourself, could it be? Or whatever genre. I mean, I love
that is
series
something that came
from
to me when you
authors
did.
across the pond. I mean, I read a lot of British murder mysteries. I've read the whole Strike collection by Robert Galbraith, aka Rollins, who did the whole Harry Potter series. I mean, the Kate Palmer mystery. I mean, you really can't miss. I love vampire erotica. It just
There's a dead body for you.
there is a dead body for you. But the whole purpose of if you can transport me from where I'm sitting in my house.
Do what Nancy Drew did for me when I was a young girl. Take me and that flashlight on a journey.
And that's what's important. And that is why I pray that I always am able to get my hands on a book. Because be it
World
an
within a whole, I
audio,
can't even
be
imagine.
it Kindle, be it my iPhone, be it a hard book, I want to have the ability to lock myself in, as my husband calls the room on the weekend, the Princess Palace. I want to be able to drink a glass of champagne in my loungewear and read, and I can still read a book in a day.
You know, you got me beat by maybe 10 hours because it takes me, if the book is over 300 pages, it takes 2 days. And the only reason is because I'm so entrenched in audiobooks and I tend to be doing more than one thing, I'll go back. Because if I get to a point in the story where I'm paying attention, I'm like, I have no clue how we got here. Now I got to go back 5 chapters and figure out how the heck
And
we
you
got
have to
here.
go back. But the
So that's
point
fine
is,
too. Because
you
it's
can
also
go back.
part of if you get to a point in a book where it's worth it to go back, the story hits so well. And I was going to say, this is one of the things, and you mentioned earlier about Stephen King and my love of Stephen King. Yes, they're fiction, but
And
every
that's the point.
single book, every single book. And the one that resonated the most and why I keep reading Stephen King is The Autopsy Room. The
Oh,
reality of being on that table
yeah. And
and
he
not
can take you there.
being dead and hearing a conversation between the people that are eating lunch over you and about to cut you open was just, and it was a short story. And
Only
it
Stephen
just
King can
lives,
take you there.
live in me because yes, these things are fiction. Of course, Cujo is fiction, but I give every dog the side eye. Every dog.
And you would be well advised.
Because Cujo was fine one day, and the next day
And
he
crazy the next.
okay. Let me wrap up here because I don't want to eat up your whole evening. I want to first say it means the world to me that you're here.
I means the world that you asked me to be here.
Not specifically about one book, but just book love is
Hmm.
where I knew you and I were on the same page. Of course, there are books we've both read, and hopefully you'll come back again. We'll pick a book because I sent you a book for your birthday. Haven't
Yes.
read it yet. When I tell you you're going to regret it the minute you get to chapter 3, you're going to regret you did not tear that book open and read it from cover to cover.
It's not too late, my friend.
Just know when you started, you're going to be like, what? And audience, just so that you know, I gave her 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Those that
Now I
know,
feel compelled
those that
to
know
pick it
are
up.
looking at this right now going, wait, if she didn't tear through that book? Oh, and just as a teaser to really prime your weekend, this woman was a victim of assault and gave birth anyway.
Oh my.
That's a teaser to the much bigger picture
Within itself.
within itself. So we're going to wrap up here. I am so glad that you came, and I'm so glad that our club members are here. I hope everybody rocked this whole journey, and we are going to do this again because we
Oh,
are
we
both
must.
first and foremost. We both have full lives. We have a ton of things to do. We both belong to book clubs. But what's 30 minutes to two dear friends and book divas who want to talk books? So
And
thank
I
you.
will be back.
I appreciate you and I appreciate my audience. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for enjoying this show. And I'll see you next time we walk down the aisles in the garden. Thanks, friends.
Good night, love.
Good night, sweetie.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.